"You're not invited to the housewarming until you apologize to your sister," my mother Terry said flatly over the phone. I heard muffled laughter in the background. Then my father Gabriel chimed in. "She'll come around. She always does." What they didn't know was that I had been the one secretly paying Maddie's mortgage for the past year. And when I finally said enough, the housewarming party turned into something much colder than they ever imagined. If you've ever been treated like the family embarrassment while quietly holding everything together, smash that like button. Subscribe if you believe respect comes before entitlement, because this is the story of how my family learned that houses built on lies and exploitation don't stay warm for long. The call came on a Tuesday evening while I was reviewing client portfolios. Terry's voice cut through my concentration like ice water. "Megan, we need to talk about the housewarming situation." I could already feel my stomach tightening. For weeks, our family group chat had been buzzing with excitement about Maddie's party. Photos of catering menus, decoration samples, even screenshots of the live band she'd bragged about booking. My phone had stayed conspicuously silent through it all. "When's the party again?" I asked, though I already knew the date was this Saturday. "Should I bring something?" The pause was long enough to hear my heartbeat in my ears. "Actually, Megan, you're not invited until you apologize to your sister." The words hit me like a physical blow. I set down my pen and stared at the financial statements scattered across my desk. Numbers that represented years of careful saving, responsible planning, the kind of discipline that had made me successful while my family treated me like their personal safety net. "Apologize for what?" I managed to ask. "For humiliating Maddie at dinner last month," Terry said, her tone sharp and rehearsed. "You made her feel small in front of everyone." The humiliation she was referring to? I had quietly asked Maddie, away from the others, why she was posting Instagram stories of designer handbag hauls when she'd mentioned being behind on bills. She'd stormed off in tears, and somehow that had become my crime against the family. "You embarrassed her, Megan," Terry continued. "She doesn't want you there. Until you apologize and promise to be more supportive, stay away." In the background, I heard Maddie's voice, thick with smugness. "Yeah, she'll cave. She always does. Megan can't stand being left out." That laugh, that entitled, careless laugh from someone who had no idea what it took to build the life she was living. I hung up without another word, my hands trembling as I set the phone down, not invited to the house I had literally paid for. Let me explain how I became the family bank. Because that story starts 2 years ago when Maddie decided she was ready for home ownership. Maddie has always been the golden child, 2 years younger than me, blessed with the kind of effortless beauty that made people stop and stare. Growing up, she was praised for her charm, her creativity, her free spirit. I was the responsible one, pushed toward practical goals, expected to be the family's financial backbone without any of the recognition. When Maddie called me crying about her dream house, I should have seen the trap being set. "Megan, please," she sobbed over the phone. "This house is everything I've ever wanted. It has the perfect kitchen for my cooking videos, and there's this amazing natural light for my photography. I just need help with the down payment. I swear I'll handle everything else." She sent me the listing. It was beautiful. A craftsman-style home with hardwood floors and vintage fixtures, the kind of place that looked like it belonged in a magazine. The kind of place I'd been saving for myself. But Maddie's credit was destroyed. Years of forgetting credit card payments, impulse purchases, and payday loans had left her with a score that made lenders laugh. She needed a cosigner, and more than that, she needed someone to front the cash. Against every instinct screaming in my head, I said yes. I wired $42,000 from my savings, money I'd been accumulating for my own down payment. Money earned through 12-hour days building my financial advisory practice, through weekend work, through saying no to vacations and new clothes and nights out. But that wasn't enough. 3 months after moving in, Maddie called again. "The mortgage is higher than I expected," she said, not quite meeting my eyes during our coffee date. "And with the utilities and HOA fees, I'm stretched pretty thin. Could you maybe help just until I get my business off the ground?" Her business was a lifestyle blog with 47 followers and an Etsy shop that had sold 3 handmade candles. So I set up an automatic transfer. $2,400 every month, straight from my account to hers. Another $600 for the HOA fees. When her electricity got shut off because she forgot to pay the bill, I quietly covered utilities too, for an entire year. I funded Maddie's dream life while she posted about manifesting abundance and following your passion. I watched her Instagram stories of dinner parties, weekend trips, shopping hauls, all funded by my sacrifice. And through it all, I told myself it was temporary, that she'd appreciate it. That family was supposed to help the family. But gratitude never came. Recognition never came. Instead, I got lectures about being too focused on money and not supportive enough of Maddie's creative journey. The breaking point came at that family dinner Terry mentioned. We were all sitting around Gabriel and Terry's dining table when Maddie started showing off her newest purchase, a $800 purse she'd bought because it was an investment piece. I pulled her aside afterward, speaking quietly so the others wouldn't hear. Maddie, didn't you say you were struggling with the mortgage? Maybe expensive accessories aren't the best idea right now. Her face twisted with rage. God, Megan, you're so judgmental. You make good money. You could never understand what it's like to struggle. You think everything has to be about spreadsheets and budgets. She stormed out, tears streaming down her face, leaving me standing there while Terry and Gabriel rushed to comfort their wounded daughter. Somehow, I was the villain for questioning why someone who couldn't afford her mortgage was buying luxury handbags. That night, sitting in my small apartment, the apartment I'd stayed in instead of buying my own house because I'd given my down payment to Maddie, I finally understood the dynamic I'd been trapped in. I was the family ATM. Useful when money was needed, disposable when accountability was requested. The night Terry called to uninvite me from the housewarming, I sat at my kitchen table and pulled up my banking records. One by one, I printed every transaction. The $42,000 down payment, highlighted in yellow. 12 monthly mortgage payments of $2,400, highlighted in blue. The HOA fees, the utility payments, even the $300 I'd sent when Maddie said she needed emergency car repairs that turned out to be new rims. When I was done, I had a 3-inch binder that told the story of how Maddie's dream house had really been built. I labeled it in black Sharpie. The house that Megan built. The math was devastating. In 1 year, I'd transferred $34,800 just in mortgage payments. Add the down payment, utilities, HOA fees, and emergencies, and I'd spent over $85,000 creating Maddie's perfect life. But what hurt more than the money was the erasure. In every family conversation, Maddie was celebrated for her achievement. Look how well she's doing, Terry would beam. She's so independent, making it work on her own. My parents had no idea that their youngest daughter's independence was funded entirely by their oldest daughter's sacrifice. The housewarming party arrived on a crisp Saturday in October. My phone exploded with photos from family and friends. Maddie posing in front of her gorgeous front door. Guests sipping champagne in the living room I'd paid for. Terry and Gabriel beaming proudly beside their successful daughter. I wasn't there, but I was busy that day. Because the week before, I'd done something that would change everything. I'd canceled the automatic mortgage payment. For the first time in a year, Maddie would be responsible for her own bills. For the first time, she'd face the reality of what homeownership actually cost. I spent the day of her party at the spa, getting my first massage in 2 years. I got my nails done, bought myself the expensive skincare I'd been putting off. I ate at a nice restaurant and ordered the wine I wanted instead of calculating the cost. For 1 day, I lived like Maddie had been living for a year, without financial anxiety. The panic call came exactly 2 weeks later. Megan, something's wrong with the bank. Maddie's voice was high and strained. The mortgage payment didn't go through. They're threatening late fees. Can you call your bank and figure out what happened? I was sitting in my office, reviewing a client's retirement portfolio. I saved the document, leaned back in my chair and smiled. Nothing's wrong with my bank, Maddie. The payment didn't go through because I didn't send it. Silence. Then, what do you mean you didn't send it? You always send it! I sent your mortgage payments for a year while you pretended to be self-sufficient. But you uninvited me from the house I've been paying for, so I figured you didn't need my help anymore. The screaming started immediately. You can't just abandon me like this. You know I can't afford this place without help. Then maybe you shouldn't have bought a house you couldn't afford, I said calmly. And maybe you shouldn't have banned me from celebrating the home I've been funding. But I need this house. It's my dream. You're my sister. I'm your sister when you need money, I replied. But apparently I'm persona non grata when you want to throw parties. You made your choice, Maddie. Now live with it. She hung up on me, but not before I heard her sobbing. The family intervention happened 3 days later. Terry and Gabriel showed up at my apartment unannounced, their faces tight with righteous anger. How could you do this to your sister? Terry demanded before I'd even fully opened the door. She's devastated. The bank is calling her every day. She's a grown woman, I said, stepping aside to let them in. She bought a house. Houses come with mortgages. That's her responsibility, not mine. Gabriel's face was red with frustration. But you've been helping her. You can't just stop without warning. Actually, I can, I said, walking to my desk and pulling out the binder. And here's exactly why. I set the house that Megan built on my coffee table and opened it to the first page. Gabriel's eyes widened as he saw the highlighted numbers. $42,000 for the down payment, I said, flipping pages. $2,400 every month for the mortgage. $600 for HOA fees. Average of $300 monthly for utilities and emergencies. Terry's mouth fell open as she processed the numbers. You paid for all of this? For a year, I said, while Maddie posted about her success and independence, while you both praised her for making it on her own, while I lived in this one-bedroom apartment because I gave her my house fund. The room was dead silent, except for the sound of pages turning as Gabriel read through the evidence. Why didn't you tell us? Terry whispered. Because I thought my family would recognize sacrifice without me having to advertise it, I said. I thought maybe someone would notice that I never seemed to have money for myself anymore, that I stopped talking about buying my own place, that I was working constantly but never seemed to get ahead. Gabriel looked up from the binder, his face pale. Megan, we had no idea. That's exactly the problem, I said. You had no idea because you never asked. You just assumed Maddie was succeeding on her own merit while I was, what, choosing to live small, choosing to have nothing? Terry started crying, not the dramatic tears she shed for Maddie's problems, but quiet, ashamed tears. We're so sorry. We should have known. We should have paid attention. You should have, I agreed. But more than that, you should have respected me enough not to ban me from a house I built. You should have asked Maddie how she was really affording her lifestyle before you celebrated her independence. The silence stretched between us, heavy with years of unexamined assumptions. What do you want us to do? Gabriel finally asked. Nothing, I said. This isn't about you anymore. This is about me finally setting boundaries. I'm done being the invisible foundation that holds up everyone else's dreams. 2 weeks later, Maddie's perfect life started crumbling in real time. The late fees piled up when she couldn't make the full mortgage payment. Her Instagram posts shifted from celebration to subtle panic, selling some of her designer items, posting about downsizing and simplifying. The bank called her daily. When she tried to refinance, they laughed at her debt-to-income ratio. She looked into selling, but the market had shifted, and she owed more than the house was worth. Meanwhile, I breathed freely for the first time in years. I redecorated my apartment, bought myself new furniture, booked a weekend trip to Portland I'd been putting off for 2 years. I started saving again, this time for my own future. Terry called every few days, trying different tactics. First, guilt. She's your sister, Megan. Family helps family. Then desperation. She might lose the house. Finally, bargaining. What if she apologizes? What if we all apologize? But I'd learned something important during my year of financial slavery. Apologies don't fix exploitation. Boundaries do. The calls from Maddie stopped after that first conversation. According to Jean, our aunt who still spoke to everyone, Maddie was furious that I'd ruined her life and destroyed her dreams. She told people I was jealous, vindictive, that I'd always resented her success. The irony was perfect. She was calling me jealous of a success I'd literally purchased for her. 3 months after I stopped paying her bills, Maddie moved back in with Terry and Gabriel. She lost the house, my house, to foreclosure. The Instagram post stopped. The lifestyle blog died. The Etsy shop closed. She got a job at a marketing firm, her first real job in 3 years. According to Jean, she was angry all the time, bitter about having to work like normal people. I felt no satisfaction in her downfall, but I felt immense relief in my freedom. For the first time since college, I was living for myself instead of funding someone else's dreams. 6 months later, I bought my own house. Not as grand as the one I'd bought for Maddie, but perfect for me. A small craftsman bungalow with a garden and a reading nook. I paid cash, money I'd saved in the months since cutting off my family's financial pipeline. The housewarming party I threw was small but genuine. Real friends who knew my story, colleagues who respected my work, my Aunt Jean who'd watched the family dynamics with growing concern for years. We ate good food, drank good wine, and celebrated something that was actually mine. Terry and Gabriel weren't invited. Neither was Maddie. For the first time in my adult life, I was celebrating in a space built on my own merit, funded by my own sacrifice, owned entirely by me. Terry still calls sometimes, usually around holidays. The conversations are different now, careful, respectful, tinged with the awareness that they can't take my compliance for granted anymore. "We miss you," she said during our last conversation. "You miss my money," I replied. "There's a difference." She couldn't argue with that. Maddie and I haven't spoken in over a year. Jean tells me she's doing better. She kept the marketing job, moved into her own apartment, seems to be learning what actual independence looks like. Part of me hopes she's learned something from losing everything I'd given her. But that's not my responsibility anymore, because I finally understand the difference between family and business. Family doesn't exploit your generosity and then exclude you from the celebration. Family doesn't take credit for your sacrifice while treating you like an embarrassment. Sometimes the warmest home you can have is the one built on self-respect instead of other people's entitlement. Looking back, I realize I'd been living my entire adult life in service to other people's dreams. I thought that made me generous, but really it made me invisible. I was the foundation everyone built on, but nobody acknowledged. The hardest part wasn't losing the money. It was losing the illusion that my sacrifice was valued. But that loss led to the most important discovery of my life. Boundaries aren't walls that keep love out. They're the foundation that makes genuine love possible. My house might be smaller than the one I bought for Maddie, but it's built on something stronger than mortgage payments. It's built on self-respect, on the understanding that I deserve to be treated as more than a funding source with feelings. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about setting boundaries and choosing self-respect over family dysfunction. Have you ever been excluded by the very people you sacrificed for? Share your story in the comments. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's building a life so good that the people who took you for granted become irrelevant to your happiness.